All right. Hello, everyone. This will be an episode of Viper, mostly unscripted. I have a couple of notes here that I want to talk about based on the concept of a maximum wage, as brought up by many people, but most prominently to me as of recent note, Sargon of Akkad. Now, yes, I realize I'm stepping into a ring that requires me to punch far, far above my weight, as it were, as a YouTuber. However, I do feel confident in my ability to hold my own here for a number of different reasons. Primarily being that Sargon himself has admitted that he is not a economically educated individual. He's not an economist. Um, Economy was not his, or economics, I should say, was not his focus of study while he was at school. Now, he's a very smart individual. He's got a good grasp of most concepts and themes that pass through society. But this one he seems to have drank a bit of the Kool-Aid on. Now, not as a bad thing. It's a very easy one to get sucked into because, and again, this is one of my first reasons here, it just feels good. It's one of those thoughts that, yeah, you know what? We should do it for the little guy, make it better for the ground level worker. Drive their wages up or at least cap the maximum wage that can be earned in a company so that if that person wants to earn more, if the CEO or president or what have you wants to have a greater number on their T4 slip at the end of the year, it's our tax form shows your pay and whatnot of the total year. Not really important. If they want to jack up that number on their T4, well then they're going to need to pay it forward down to the little guys. Now we're a quarter of the way through the time I want to keep this to, so I'm going to try to roll on quicker through the rest of this. Now, the typical selling points of a maximum wage. I mentioned the whole feel-good quality of it, but there's also the argument that, well, and Sargon makes this one, there will be more money in the hands of basic consumers, more money available to be spent, and if more money is being spent, then that's fantastic. More tax revenue, more money for social programs, for infrastructure spending, all kinds of good stuff. And again, in theory, in a perfect world where companies don't have the freedoms that they do as is, or I should say in a perfect world for the maximum wage concept, that would be the case. There's also the concept of the whole less animosity regarding earning disparity. So the gap between the rich and the poor, which has been widening, though the poor level has been bumping up significantly, or at least consistently over time. So we're improving the bottom, just, there's a gap in the middle. Those are the three main selling points that I seem to come across. The more money in the hands of basic consumers to stimulate the economy, less animosity overall regarding earning disparity from those on the bottom side. I'm sure if you tell the people on the top they're not going to earn as much, they might be a little upset. And the whole feel-good option to it. Yes, feels. But here are the issues with a maximum wage. Now, first off, it does reduce interest in new business investments into a nation. If every nation around the world had the same law, if they all said, every single nation went, no, you know what? If your country's going to be headquartered here or you're going to have people working here, well, God damn it, you're going to have to work out a certain amount that you can be paid based off of a multiple of the lowest paid individual. Fine. Again, that's the perfect world I alluded to earlier. But that's not the world we live in. The world we live in says that, well, if you want to start up a company in Timbuk2, then by all means, go ahead. You've got some local legislation you've got to tiptoe around, and there's all that. But overall, yeah, come on in, start up, make your stuff here. And when you consider the fact that for most manufacturing and most businesses, really, the greatest single cost in that company is going to be human labor. There are, of course, exceptions, but far and wide, the vast majority is that the greatest cost is going to be human labor. If you make it more expensive to earn more as a president, or you start messing around with how they can pay their employees, how they can structure their compensation scales and pay grades, you're going to get people leaving. You're going to get businesses leaving your nation, taking money completely out of the economy because they don't want the hassle. It's that simple. I have a short anecdote if I can get to it, and I probably won't, but I'll work on it. Second, it increases labor costs, as I mentioned, making it more profitable or easier to compete with foreign-based companies by either subcontracting, so they don't technically work for you, they work for a different company, using offshore labor entirely, so hiring completely out of country, and of course, moving the company out of country as a whole, which I already mentioned. Because of course, if you can make more money by headquartering your company somewhere else and paying people somewhere else and then just shipping it in, because again, labor costs more than shipping, again, majority, hashtag not all, you're going to do that. That's just smart business sense. At the end of the day, it's about how much money you can bring into a business. Profit typically means growth in that business. Growth means more profits. It's a vicious circle, hopefully on the up and up. Third, it restricts, and this one's really important to me. I should mention this because as a small business owner, the ability to run my company, my business in the way that I choose. Now I'm on a hiatus this year, but that's not the point. The ability to run my company the way that I choose to do so, so long as it's in accordance with what's currently being allowed, that's very important to me. So things that come in and say, no, we're going to further mandate how you are allowed to do what you do. If I'm not abusing anyone, there shouldn't be a problem, but that's beside the point. It does restrict a private entrepreneur's ability to run their business as they see fit, and of course to pay themselves the compensation that they feel entitled to. Or in the case of, let's say, corporations, to be compensated to the degree that the company ownership feels is appropriate. Now I'm past the 7-minute mark. I wanted to keep this under 8, so I'll leave most of it here, but I'm going to end it with an anecdote. So we'll push this to 9. My anecdote is this. I grew up in a city called Oshawa, Ontario. Historical fact, they made a lot of the de Havilland Mosquito twin-engine fighter interceptors from World War II in the General Motors plant that I'm about to speak of, that is, well, was formerly located there in Oshawa. A number of years ago, when the recession started to hit, GM packed up shop and moved much of their truck production to Mexico and the southern US. It was simply cheaper to have the work done down there. The dollar was fluctuating, Canada's dollar was up relative to the US. It was just a savvy business move at the time. Because one of the problems was that the local CAW union, the Canadian Auto Workers, which has now been replaced by what I think is Unifor 222. That is not important. CAW managed to push up the cost of labor to drive up the level of benefits compensation that General Motors workers were achieving, or were receiving, I should say, to a point where, despite the fact that this truck plant consistently won awards from companies and appraisal groups like J.D. Power and Associates and Motor Trend, they were constantly winning awards for highest initial quality, highest long-lasting quality. All these things were just, it was awards left, right, and center. My dad took me in for a tour once in this giant display case out in the lobby with plaques and awards all through it about the awards they'd won. And they go, yeah, there's rooms in the back for the rest of them. We just can't keep them all in the display case. Just the most recent ones. We swap out the ones every year. Well, those awards no longer happen primarily because, well, the truck plant is no longer there. It's just not. It was far more financially feasible to uproot an entire plant, lay off about, I think, 2,400 workers at the end, and pay severance packages, pay all of that, get rid of it, to move out of country. Because the cost of labor was too damn high. Could the CEOs have taken massive pay cuts? Yeah, sure they could. But when you think about it, a few million doesn't go all that far over the course of a year when you're paying for all these different very high-priced labor aspects in a certain region. It's just simpler in the long run to pack up and leave. Now, can you imagine it getting so expensive to maintain quality production that you are willing to cut your best production facility, the facility from which they took employees down to Detroit to teach methods of how they did things to other plants across the company because of how successful they were? Can you imagine completely shutting down that production facility because a workers' union drove up the cost of labor that much? The second they had a chance to get out, they left. They got the hell out of Dodge and left nothing but some spinning, flattened tires and a trail of burning rubber behind them. Sargon, I know you're not an economist. Technically, neither am I. I have some college education in economics. I've been through for business management and entrepreneurship, as well as business sales and marketing. I know a thing or two about the product mix, the price, place, promotion, and others. Product, price, place, promotion. And when it comes to pricing, cost is a big part of that. Higher the cost, higher the price has to be to maintain the production of that item in the company overall. So I agree with you that in theory, in a very specific set of circumstances, the maximum wage concept would be a good thing. Unfortunately, we do not live in such a fairy tale world. Things do not always go the way we want. And business, at the end of the day, is ultimately going to be more about making money than making you feel good. Hashtag not all. There are businesses out there focused on just creating good feels. And I'm not talking about brothels. But no, in all seriousness, I admire your, faith in humanity, misplaced as I may think it to be. But at the end of the day, realism has to pull through. And I have to say that, yeah, a maximum wage simply is not feasible. So thank you very much for providing me with an idea, a concept that I can actually speak to and feel fairly confident speaking to. If there's interest in this, I can do a much more in-depth and analytical video explaining things like price ceilings and price floors and how they tend to affect supply, demand, and overall market performance. But as of right now, I'm over 13 minutes. I'm going to roll this down and shut her down for the evening because I have a guest speaker presentation tomorrow. So thank you very much for the opportunity to engage. Wish you all the best. And, vainly, I suppose, I do hope to see, I would like to see a comment. I would love to see a Sargon comment pop up in my comment sections. To everyone else watching this, thank you for sitting through now 14 minutes of my ramblings on about a maximum wage concept. If you want to hear more about it, as I mentioned, about a more analytical video, throw some comments down there, give it an upvote, and say, hey, I'd love to see that. Before I go, though, to all of my Patreon patrons and everyone who's supported me so far with the likes, the shares, the moral support, of which there has been plenty, and plenty needed, thank you. Without you guys, none of the videos that I do would have any more substance to them than just me smashing my head against a brick wall. Which is kind of how I feel some days anyway, but now it's more often than not a Nerf wall, a padded cell, if you will. So thank you, everyone. Good evening. Good night.